Welcome to the third episode of Sacred Cows of Coaching. My name is Biran and
am Neel.
and today we are going to tackle another sacred cow, coaching chemistry. Do we really have a choice? Neel, over to you. Do we really have a choice?
Do we really have a choice? Well, Biran, first of all, I want to say I'm very excited to be here for episode 3. It's great to be here with you again. And I love this question, right? As coaches, do we really have a choice when it comes to coaching chemistry? And I just find this topic of coaching chemistry in itself so rich. And I wonder, as a starting point, whether it's worth actually just going back to what do we actually mean by coaching chemistry? Because it's something that we throw about, right? And whatever level of coaching we're at, there's this assumption that we are going to have this coaching chemistry conversation, and we should have this coaching chemistry conversation. And at its core, it's really about a vibe, isn't it? Do I feel like I can work with this person, and does that person feel that they can work with me? Can we have a sense of connection, a sense of being able to create a positive working alliance? And so often we have 15 to 30 minutes in order to establish whether we have that connection. We then have times where actually we're assigned a coachee. It's almost like an Indian arranged marriage. Here you go. Some power if we're part of a program. Some person, some all-seeing, all-knowing person has looked at the request from the coachee. They've looked at your bio and they've gone, oh, they'll fit. And so we have no choice. We have other situations where maybe we are one of many coaches that are being introduced to a client, and they will make a choice. So almost this kind of really, really messed up version of speed dating or a dating game that we have to play. And within that, there's so much going on, isn't there? There's so much going on between us. And what I find fascinating is somehow we're going from no relationship to having some form of relationship in a very short period of time. And that relationship can be incredibly inviting. There can be that strong sense of connection, that sort of strong sense of hey, these two souls, they're sort of coming together to do this work. You can also have those situations where it's like this, and I can't think of a more eloquent way of describing it. So there's so much here. So when you hear that term chemistry, what does that evoke for you?
I will use a metaphor. To me, that chemistry or having a chemistry with someone feels like having a nice dance partner. A dance partner that you can rely on, that you can trust, that you will create a nice art together. That is the metaphor for me. Doesn't matter if it is in coaching or if it is we do deliver trainings, right? Co-delivering sometimes with another facilitator. It is having that vibe. An element of that vibe is definitely trust. That is about creating that beautiful dance, that art together. And it's interesting because you can't know it for sure just for a 40 minutes conversation if this is going to work or not. It's the first vibe that you get from that person in coaching setup, right? We have 45 minutes, maybe an hour of chemistry calls with potential coachees. And then how do we know that it's going to work in 40 minutes, right? It is interesting. And sorry, you were going to say something?
No, you keep going.
I was thinking when you were describing sometimes this is like a pre or arranged marriage. Yes, sometimes it's like that. And I was also thinking other times that, clients find me through my website and we are not hired by an organization. They do their research and they find a couple of coaches. They find you And when I have my chemistry calls with them, either chemistry or discovery or strategy, there are many different names out there to describe that first meeting. I always ask them, did you meet with other coaches?
Mm.
Did you speak with someone else? And I always encourage them to speak with other people as well. Even if they don't choose me, even if it means that loss of business, I do it because I believe in that chemistry so much.
Then tell me more about that, because that's a very generous thing to do, isn't it? To those that are new to this space and perhaps not familiar, to almost invite a potential client to go speak to other people who, in some ways, are like competitors. So what is it about that belief in chemistry that's so important to you?
I think it's really important. It's the foundation of a successful coaching relationship. I believe it's the foundation. If we don't feel that chemistry with the person that we coach, we will talk about it. We might not feel it as coaches as well. But let's take the coachee's perspective first. If they don't really feel like the vibe, the thing, the energy, the chemistry there, I don't know if they can be vulnerable enough in that conversation, right? Vulnerable with us, vulnerable with themselves, feel safe enough to be vulnerable with themselves as well.
So what we're talking about here, I think, is really, really interesting, and it brings me back to various different experiences I've had of chemistry. And in one piece of work that I did for a large healthcare body, I was part of a coaching service, and the matching actually happened through an algorithm, right? And it was largely based on availability. And I still remember getting very excited when I got an email through, and there would be someone's name would appear, right? There would be this person called Biran Yilancioglu, and I would think, who is this? Who is this Biran? And I'd start to create a story in my head around who is this person I'm going to meet, and then you get onto the platform, click the button, you go through, and it was amazing because there would always be this what felt like 20 seconds, but it was probably a split second of just meeting this other person. And like literally you were just saying hello, but there was all of this exchange going on. And you could feel it. You could feel this kind of, what is the vibe that's emerging between us? In quite a deliberate and intense way, right? Two people just looking at each other through a screen. And by the way, as an aside, this is where I reject the idea that virtual makes connection harder, because actually in my experience it's not the technology, it's how we show up with it, because those were very intense experiences. And so you'd have some people who would kind of arrive and their faces would light up and they were like, hey, and others maybe a little bit kind of more withdrawn, more reserved, and yet I was just struck by the complexity of the subconscious processes that were in play.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about chemistry, there is so much going on, right? Do I remind you of your father or your brother or some boyfriend who you didn't like? Or there's so much potential for there to be some transference at play, and then counter transference. And then who are these people we're meeting? Sometimes they've never had a chemistry session before. Sometimes they've never had a coaching session before. So they don't really know what this dance is about. They're confused. Sometimes they have different desires for what they want to get from that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people come with a list of questions and I'm getting interviewed. Boom, 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 boom. You have other people who ask you about you, and then actually they say to you, actually, I really want to know about you as a human being, not about you in a professional sense. There's so much range, there's so much diversity, so much going on here. And I just think it's fascinating because it's this small microcosm of human relating that we're experiencing, right? In this kind of laboratory construct of the chemistry core. You talked about trust. We're dealing everything from from initial connection through to establishing rapport, through to revealing perhaps very intimate information about ourselves, to test whether we can be in a trusting relationship with someone.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we bring this back to our question, do we really have a choice as coaches in chemistry? Like, we had that initial conversation and they say they want to work with us. Do we have a say there? What do you think?
So the textbook answer would be yes, we have a say. And I remember training 10 years ago, always being told I have a choice. I have a choice in the matter.
Hmm.
And I do have a choice. I can say no.
Hmm.
In theory. So when you were training to be a coach, would you have said no? Now, there you are, young Biran.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Probably I wouldn't. There was a fear. And the main fear was that my fear was losing business, losing client, losing hours. I think that is one of the fears that coaches have. I know from my supervisees that it's not me. It was not only me. That is one of the biggest fears. What about you?
Well, no, I don't think I would have claimed that choice. And think about our industry. Think about the fact that it's our profession. So professionally, we need to gain experience when we're starting out. We're trying to make an income. And we have coaching accreditation bodies that use number of hours of experience as a key metric in terms of determining the level of your expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How many hours of coaching experience do you have? So all the incentives are skewed towards establishing your reputation, generating an income, and building your body of coaching work.
Yeah.
So given those incentives, am I really going to say no? And of course, then that maybe sets the bar higher for saying no. Right. So I've said no in my career twice. Just
I said
twice.
one time I said no, maybe
Wow.
twice,
Right.
but recently once.
Right.
I can't remember the second one in detail. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And what was your reason for saying no?
I just didn't feel the vibe. Like, that potential coachee, triggered something in me. And I felt, it was a feeling. I felt like we were not a good match.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the only thing probably you can get in 40 minutes conversation. Because in that 40 minutes, unless they say something very clear that is against your beliefs or value systems, you can't get much, right? I was like, no, I don't feel it, and I think that is another thing. We can work on ourselves about that, right? It might be a development opportunity for a coach to take on that challenge and take it to your supervisor as well, to your supervision. Reflect on what is happening on you and why are you triggered, and how can you overcome that, right? It is a great personal development opportunity for a coach as well. And yet, we might not feel ready to take on that challenge.
Right.
One day we might feel ready, the other day we might feel like a lot is already happening in our lives. We are already being resilient. Our circumstances or the context is different. We feel more resilient to take on another challenge, and we do it. But the other day we might not feel it and we say no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that you're naming that, because we're talking on one level around at the beginning of the career, right? We have these very clear incentives, but we still have clear incentives even if we've been doing this work for a really, really long time. And as you point out, right, how we experience ourselves and how we show up in the presence of another becomes incredibly valuable data about our patterns and how we're wired. So then challenging ourselves to work with people that we may not immediately feel that vibe with, assuming they want to work with us,
Yeah.
right, can be immensely developmental. And so we get to the point, and I've been discussing this with a lot of experienced coach colleagues, and actually most of them are saying to me, I don't say no, because it is this great opportunity. It's really about the other person.
Yeah.
And I found that the way that I go into chemistry sessions has really, really changed over the years. So I now go into them fully self-authoring, in the sense that I'm going to present to you who I am, what I'm about. You're going to experience me as a coach. And off the back of that, you can make your decision as to whether or not you want to work with me.
Mm.
And it's almost like a Marmite test. I don't think I'm quite as polarizing as Marmite, but it's the idea of like, I'm not the right coach for everyone,
Yeah.
right?
Neel,
This
what
is
I'm
about,
hearing, sorry,
yeah,
what I'm
go on.
hearing and noticing as you're talking is the confidence. I hear that when you're saying, I'm going to present to you myself and I'm going to show you how I coach, and then you will make the choice. But the way that you say it is very, confident.
Mm,
So that makes me think over the years now we have that experience. We feel more confident about who we are, how we coach, and we are able to say it.
yeah.
Maybe going back to 10 years or 15 years ago, maybe we didn't feel that confident. And that is why we were not so strong, or we didn't say no to a client, or even if we didn't feel it, or those measures of ours or success or experience became more important.
Yeah. I'm just reflecting on that notion of confidence, but there's something there about having a clear sense of your identity in my mind, right? And here I am. I reach a stage of development where I fully own who I am. And I think in your reflecting back, it was helpful to hear that I'm giving the choice to the coachee. So rather than me choosing if I want to work with them, the choice I'm making is, here you go. This is what you're going to get. Love it or hate it.
Exactly.
And therefore it's trusting in I suppose the tangibility and the reality of that, and that leading to the best possible outcome in terms of fit. But it is a brave step, because I would not developmentally even have known who I wanted to be as a coach, what I stood for as a coach. Of course, you do it on paper, you write it on paper, but to truly embody that takes time, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So most of the time, from my supervisees, I get that question: is it me doing something wrong? That is the sign or symptom of we're not fully owned our identity yet. When we say, did I do something wrong? Or maybe I should change the way I coach. That's why they didn't pick me. Or, So self-doubt, right? So once we own our identity, we still question maybe ourselves in the sense of, well, what development areas do we still have? But we don't question who we are or how we show up. And we can easily say, this is it. Take it or leave it. Right?
There you go. It's an option, right? And I think there's a strategy there, which if you think about it, there's a pipeline process, isn't there? There's like you in the shop window with your website. There's your bio that might go to a client. And actually, there needs to be really, really tight integration between all of those different marketing artifacts, so to speak, through to the experience of you. So our brand as a coach, our identity as a coach, who we are, what we stand for, what our philosophy is, has to be fully integrated into that entire life cycle. And I say that then even questioning myself whether that's where it needs to be. I think there's opportunity to continue to be tighter. So that in the same way that if you decide you want to buy a car and you're deciding between a Kia and an Audi, somehow you have that clear sense of differentiation.
Yeah. I like that. That reminds me of the metaphor. You might be a cup of tea, and they might need a cup of espresso. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you are bad or your skills are not good enough or anything else. It's just your tea. They need an espresso. That's why it doesn't work. They're not gonna change what they want or what they
Yeah.
and you're not gonna become an espresso if you're a tea. So.
And you could be the finest Italian espresso or the finest, Darjeeling tea, but it's what the need is. And there's a meta position around all of this as well as we talk about it, Biran, because we're coming in as coaches, and actually, does the client need a coach, right?
Oh, yeah.
Are they coachable? Is it the right time for them? And so there's all this other stuff going on that is independent of us, but for us we need to be mindful of.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important element here, because I've had chemistry conversations where people have come to the realization that actually what they need is a therapist. They don't need a coach.
I remember, Neel, you and I, when we were working on a corporate project, they asked for a coach. And I had a conversation with a sponsor. You had a conversation with a potential coachee. And we came up, actually, what they need is a mentor. Right? And then we designed that mentoring process together, which worked really well. This reminds me of another thing, like when we say, do we have a choice to say no? It doesn't have to be saying no to a client. No, I'm not going to work with you. It is also saying no to one type of intervention and yes to another type of intervention, and telling it to the client, okay, you want coaching, but actually this is what we discovered. This might be more useful. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do we have the courage to say that as well?
Yeah. And I find myself almost bouncing up and down in my chair with excitement, because as we contemplate this topic, I feel it's underrepresented and underexplored in the profession. And it's so interesting. Here it is, relationally, in terms of the subconscious, the conscience, in terms of that meta context and meta position, in terms of the needs and the discovery around the needs, there is so much here, and there is so much learning opportunity for us as coaches. And I just find that beautiful, frankly.
So one of the other things I would like to maybe discuss before we finish, we said we're not going to keep these episodes long for the sake of the attention of our audience. But one other thing that I would like to discuss or address is how do we say during the process, let's say they said yes, you said yes, and as a coach you feel like it's not working. Right, the coaching process has started. You had a couple of sessions. You had your supervision, and and now you're sure you need to raise that. You need to say no in the middle of the relationship, in the middle of the coaching program. How do we say that? And I know some coaches don't even address it because they see like it's a favor. What is your perspective on that?
In my perspective, and maybe this is included in what you articulated there, right? I'm going to make some assumptions potentially here, but my sense is if I felt that way, I would have brought it into the dialogue with the coachee.
Mm.
And certainly in supervision, as well as coaching, some of the most meaningful moments. I mean, I can tell you, I had a coachee who last week told me that they were cross with me after our last session, right? And for me, that was a beautiful moment.
It is.
It was a beautiful moment. I said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for saying that. And we worked with it and we worked through it. And we both agreed that that deepened our relationship. And so for me, that's where it comes back to this such a beautiful dimension of the work we do. It's about human relating and our capacity to be imperfect, to name other people's imperfections, to hear them heard, to hear them responded to, and to build greater trust as a result of that. So we also have those situations in a coaching program where maybe the coachee is less in contact than they were at the outset. Maybe they're taking more time to schedule their next session.
Mm.
And there's that opportunity to inquire into, well, what's going on here? What's happening here? Could be something in their context, could be something personal for them, could be something about the relationship. And it's this inviting in. And I think this is really, really core here across the specific topic we're exploring, which is to invite in the possibility of rejection.
Mm.
Has something happened? Have I said or done something that's caused you to be distant? And I think that's really fundamental here, is that yes, there is a choice, and yes, we can enable other people to make their own choices, but it can also still feel like a rejection. And I want to name that. And I would say that probability wise, I'm fortunate enough that people are more likely to say yes than to say no, but still a significant number say no. And there is a little part of me that goes, but recognizing it might be in the service of what's right. And that's a key part of our development and our growth as well, isn't it? So where are we now in this conversation, Biran?
Oh, where are we now? I think we're looking at, again, as we promised, we are trying to look at the situation from many different perspectives. I don't know if we're going to come with a conclusion, though. But that is not our purpose, is it? I think the conclusion is very personal. I think the answer to that is very personal. It depends on where you are at in your own personal development journey as a coach. And also, as I said, many other circumstances and that is happening in your life.
Because my concluding thought is, do we really have a choice? Yes, in theory we have a choice, but in fact to even hold it in those terms is so simplistic. I mean, this is such a rich area of exploration, of learning as coaches, but also as human beings. And so I say, fire the person that framed that question. Let's do better next time.
What I would like to hear from our audience, if they have listened to us so far. So have you ever said no? Share it with us. Have you ever said no? What was the consequence of it? Maybe you wanted to say no, but you didn't, or maybe you did. And what was the result? What happened? Share it with us and share it with the other people so we can learn from each other and grow together. Any other last words, Neel, for this episode?
No, Biran, always a pleasure speaking with you. I enjoy it. I get so much out of it, and I look forward to doing it again soon. And to those listening, thank you for engaging. Thank you for those who are sending us feedback. We really appreciate it. Keep it coming.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.